Hello and welcome to the Practical Animal Channel, the channel that showcases who's who and what's what in wildlife, the countryside, and the animal industry. Almost every week, we arrange an interview with an animal industry professional, somebody who works with animals or in the countryside, and we ask them for their insight into what it takes to work with animals. The channel is for you if you are a land-based, a further education student, or a higher education student doing animal management or one of the allied subjects, or if you are graduated from college or in mid-career perhaps, and you want to do a career change in order to work with animals or outside in nature. Either way, we interview animal industry professionals, asking them what it takes to work with animals. My guest today is Ryan Stocks. Ryan is head falconer at Owl Adventures, based in Ripon in North Yorkshire in northern England. And we're going to ask Ryan what it takes to do what he does. Ryan, welcome to the Practical Animal Channel.
Hello there, John. Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Thank you for giving your time. First of all, Ryan, can you tell us about this fantastic creature on your fist?
Yes, so this is Henrietta. She is a European or Eurasian eagle owl, as often known. And I've had her many, many years. She's now 19 years old. She was hand-reared from a very young age, just like all my birds of prey, which makes her perfectly tame, very much used to people and distractions and noise and all that kind of thing. Very calm bird. Bit of a lazy one when we fly her free, but that's fine. That's quite natural for the eagle owls. But she is a big girl, weighing my arm down. A little training session for my arm in a sense here. And she's weighing currently just over 6 pounds, which is sort of between her flying weight and what we call her fat weight. She's sort of in between that at the moment. Her wingspan is just about 6 feet when she chooses to actually put some effort in and fly a good distance, and we see that. And she is what we call feather perfect. That's for two reasons. One, her enclosure is ideal with the materials I use, etc. But actually this one also, because she's so lazy, she just sits in every all day doing nothing. So I could put her in almost anything and she'd stay that way, I'd imagine. She's a lovely, friendly bird. She does lay eggs every Easter. She just laid one recently. We made a nice omelette. I'm only kidding, we didn't really, but in theory that'd be possible. Yeah, aside from that, you know, she's one of my favourites because I'm one of the first birds I ever worked with when I started, and now she's mine. I feel quite lucky.
That's great. Ryan, so you are head falconer at the company Owl Adventures. Please, can you describe how you got to this position? If you can go back as early as possible to maybe GCSEs at secondary school, how did you get to where you are today, Ryan?
Well, if you go back as far as that, I never really thought I'd ever work with animals. I've always been interested in nature. As a child, I was really interested in wildlife, especially predators. They're just things that kill things that are rather cool and awesome. And when I was about 8, 9 years old, I had a stack of books that were mostly about sharks. And I thought it'd be great to work with sharks. But when you live in the middle and north of England, it's quite a difficult type of work placement to get working with large fish like that. So throughout the years, you know, I did have some stick insects as a child, and some other, you know, bugs and things like that, and dogs as a kid, things like that. And then I ended up working as a baker after school, and then I went on to do technician work in a high school. And again, at that point, I did not think that I'd ever work with animals. If you'd asked me then, you know, would you ever work with big owls and falcons and hawks and such, I would not have believed it. It would have been a complete dream, really. And it wasn't until I was about 27, and isn't that part of your life where you sort of need some extra work, as it were, looking around for things that were going about. And I noticed that Lightwater Valley Bird of Prey Centre were looking for new assistants. And I thought that'd be really exciting. I'll go and see. And I got in there. Stuart, who was my ex-boss, if you like, who I still talk to, he taught me the basics, things like the falconers, not how to handle the birds, enough to do a bit of handling at the centre with the customers. I learned a lot of the basic facts about them so I could answer those sort of simpler questions that people more commonly have. And that began my knowledge journey, if you like, on birds of prey. And quite quickly, I was actually doing flying displays there. So I kind of did it the wrong way around. I didn't start with the cleaning and the sort of basic dirty stuff. I started doing some of the more practical performance-y things. And that was for two reasons. Firstly, Stuart needed someone to fill that gap. They had displays to do it there. And secondly, I've done a lot of amateur and some professional performance work over the years, like pantomimes and things like that. So I was quite confident, I suppose, to just get up there and fly the birds. And I remember doing the first display, which was with a barn owl, an eagle owl, smaller than this one though, and an African vulture. Now, I know I'm watching right now, I think, an African vulture when you're so new to that job. To be fair, she was a very old African vulture, very big bird, Rappel's griffon vulture, and she was so old she couldn't really fly. So she just walked around and you threw bits of chicken on the floor for her to follow. So it sounds, extraordinary to fly a vulture that early, but it was that kind of format, if you like. And I went out and did one of these displays, and I remember being told, wow, it went wrong a little bit, and some of the facts weren't quite right, but it's as if you've done it 100 times, because I had that ability to just, in my mind, I'm going, this is going wrong, I've got that fact wrong, I know I have, and what am I doing here? But I didn't show it to the audience to see, excuse me, come up there. So that was one of those sort of attributes I realised I had from that past experience of doing that. So anyway, I worked for the centre for a couple of years, and the centre then changed ownership. Things changed a bit. The centre actually isn't there anymore. It disappeared a few years ago. And my previous boss said, I've actually got a few spare owls. Henrietta was one of them here. Not really doing much at the minute. Would you like to borrow them, maybe do a few school visits or something like that? I thought, I'll give it a go. So I rang up a few local schools, and before you knew it, I had about 10 bookings for school visits. And I really quickly realised, wow, this is of great interest to people. I was in a point in my life where I'd fallen in love with the falconry and the working with the birds, and I just would have loved to have done it as a job, part-time perhaps, or something like that. So I sort of started to build it up and started to look for static displays I could do and other bits and pieces like that. And that's how it kind of, short story, that's how the business was born. So it wasn't like one day I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up my own bird of prey display business. It kind of happened a bit more organically in a way. And like I say, I remember when that first year or two working there, and I did every weekend and school holiday whilst I was still working in a high school during the weekdays. And I just remember thinking about the birds all the time, and every spare minute I had was researching about them, looking at facts about the owls and things like that. And, I was practically dreaming about it, and it was I just knew it was what I wanted to do. And 10 years now that I've had the business Owl Adventures, and, we progressed over the years. We started out doing just a few, like I say, school visits and a few bits and pieces until it quite quickly became a full-time occupation. We're about to start our 11th year doing a static display in the museum gardens in York. That's our kind of bread and butter work, if you like. And on top of that, we do flying shows and events, school visits, like I say, the usual sort of mobile bird of prey work. We also have some exotic animals. I got them about 3 years into the business just to add to what we're already doing, especially for school visits and educational things. So, we've got some nice, easy to keep reptiles, we've got some corn snakes, we've got the boa constrictor, some big cockroaches and things like that. So now we have a little snake room, and currently 12 birds of prey. And that's what we use for all the display work I now do full time. And I am really privileged to be doing it, incredibly privileged to be doing it. The best thing about, there are two things I love about it. One, just the basic working with the animals. It's a wonderful thing to do. But I've had people come to me before and say, I'd love to get into working with animals because I don't really like working with people. Well, that's fair enough. Some people are like that. The thing is, if you want to make a living out of working with animals, you have to be good with the people who are going to pay you to show the animals or visit your centre or whatever it is. So it really is important to enjoy actually educating people as well, answering those questions. I mean, some of the facts about eagle owls, as an example, are fascinating. These big feet here, she can crush the skull of a roe deer, for example, that pressure they can put on, the way that they can rotate their head around to well over 200 degrees because of those fixed eyes in the sockets. Just so privileged to be doing this, really quite unique job. Self-employed, which I quite like, and it's special, and you never tire of it, and there's always something new to learn, always a new experience to have with them as well.
Now, there's something else that is unique about your business, isn't there? I've probably interviewed a score of head falconers at bird of prey centres, but now you are different, aren't you, Ryan? You've got a mobile display setup. Can you
Yes.
tell us, please, what's what skills do you need to be able to do what you do? You need to do the falconers, not you need to be good with telemetry. What else do you need? I mean, does mechanics come into it, for example?
There are a number of differences. I mean, a lot of the fundamental skills you need are the same. You mentioned the falconers, not health checking your birds, how to train them, weighing them, flying them, all that kind of stuff. And there is so much to learn. As I said, you never stop learning, even when you get to the point where I feel I'm now, where I kind of know everything that's really important. There's still more to learn all the time. So those fundamental aspects are the same, but there are various differences, and there's a couple of main differences. One is the actual animals that you're using. So if you have birds of prey that live in that bird of prey centre, they can probably see out of their mesh or their window into the flying arena, perhaps. That to them is their home. That whole flying arena is a little bit like an aviary to them in a sense. So when they fly there on a regular basis, they're so used to that one venue, and they always fly really well. Bird of prey centres tend not to let dogs in, and so there's not the distractions or the concerns. When you've got birds of prey that go to different venues and different shows, there's different landscapes, different sets of trees with different types of birds in. Oh, there's crows in that one. Is that a red kite in the sky? You might go to an event where there's a big audience, and if they're not used to big crowds, that could be an issue. There could be helium balloons, there could be a dog show in the distance, the horses over there, funfair in the distance, live music in the far corner, and all these other distractions. So you need your birds to be really robust, really used to all that kind of distraction, all that noise, all that activity. Now, the way to do that is to hand rear the bird from a young age and actually take it to these events while it's that young age. They grow really quickly, but if you have it around all these different things, it will absorb them and grow up with them, and it'll be perfectly normal. And that's the best way to do that, to make a good start on things. And then the other thing is just to kind of know your birds really well. I mean, Henrietta's, like I say, quite lazy here. So if she's not going to do anything in a flying show, she'll just sit on the floor, maybe walk about a bit. She's okay. She's just defying that right now by trying to jump down to the floor there. And so she's okay. I've got another owl, for example, Eva, my Canadian great horned owl, who has on many occasions gone up to a tree. From that height, I can see what's going on here. I can see the dogs now really clearly, etc. And she sits there till everybody else is cleared away, and we just have to wait for her to come down. She's not going to go off anywhere. We don't have to find her and track her, but we just have to wait till she comes down later. To be fair, with experience of doing all these events and these shows, I'm starting to get to know when she's likely to go up, and I'll pick her up and hold her for a minute while that certain thing's happening, and we can avoid it better. But again, that comes with a lot of experience. As for personal attributes, I suppose this comes into being self-employed as well. You've got to have a certain bravery isn't the right word, but a certain willing to take on a challenge, if you like, that kind of willingness to take a bit of a risk, know that it's not going to always be that easy. I mean, one of the main difference from a business point of view of a centre and a mobile unit is that the centre probably has more costs for a start. You've got more birds to feed, more housing and maintenance, therefore. You probably have more staff to pay, and you will have to advertise to get them to actually come to your venue. With the mobile work, we get paid to go to the various venues. Are we keeping count of how many times we're jumping off here? I picked you, Henry, because I thought you'd be the steadiest bird. And so you've got all those sort of extra costs with the centre. We don't have, although we still have quite a lot of costs when you add it all up, it's not quite the same. So in that respect, it's sort of easier. But then it's also harder in the respect you've got to get the bookings in. I'm very lucky because I've got things like the York display where we're kind of there 7 days a week throughout the summer. We alternate the birds we take, partly for the birds so they have a rest day, but also so people get to see different species when they visit more than once and things like that. And that means we've got that kind of constant work. But that's the biggest challenge for mobile work, is actually getting enough work in and really sort of managing it well in that respect. Otherwise, the skills you need are otherwise very similar. I think you probably have to be more tolerant, maybe more patient if you do mobile work than a bird of prey centre, especially in regards to certain members of the public. You know, most people, vast majority of people, really quite like falconry and bird of prey handling and flying and birds in captivity. There's a very small proportion of people who don't like it. Now, that's absolutely fine. I'll give you a really good example. We had a lovely warm day. It was about 25 degrees, quite rare for Britain. And we had the Harrisawks on their tall perches. They were possibly Ben Long perches. And they're in the sunshine, getting like lovely vitamin D, lovely and warm. They've got their water, which they've probably already had a bit of a dip, but they're sat there really relaxed and calm. And we actually had someone walk by who chose not to ask, but instead they had a go saying, "Get those birds out of the sun right now. That's mean and cruel." And, "Oh, excuse me, madam, we'll explain it." And off she went. And then someone else said, "Oh, actually, can I ask about that?" I said, "Right, well, today's 25 degrees. These birds are from the Arizona desert and Death Valley, where it can hit 40, 50 degrees. They're not going to suffer in the sun. In fact, they really like it. And if we put them in the shade, they'd be jumping, trying to get into the sun. And that's really good from that sunbathing. You know, we've got Harrisawks, which aren't used to, well, they were born, my house is born here, but they're not sort of naturally built for our weather. So we work with that. We have full covered aviaries, so they're not getting wet in winter, for example. But on the sunny days, we like to get them out in that sunshine and get them, you know, get that vitamin D process on the feathers there. You know, the Arctic species we've got, well, we don't have a snow owl, but the Canadian great horned owl, they're in the shade with their water. And even then they sometimes jump into the sun because they like that sunshine, you know. And we're monitoring them. So we know if one's panting a lot, if it's, you know, looking a bit warm, we don't take anything particularly big and Arctic on a hot day anyway. We leave them at home with water just to keep cool. So it's all monitored. But like I say, going back to the members of the public, you've got to be able to deal with all the different types of people who may come by at that event and see your birds, which you don't tend to get as much at bird of prey centres, because people are going there because they want to see those birds of prey. So yeah, you've got all types of clientele with the mobile work. I think it can be long days. It can, you know, you're out in all weathers. And another thing as well about the sort of risk management of your birds. Obviously, we do everything we must to avoid birds getting near each other and attacking each other. You know, owls eat other owls in the wild, so that's something we've got to be very careful of. We also have to do everything to ensure we don't have a bird, you know, lose a bird, have a bird suffer in any way, whatever it might be. And I think that is a little bit harder, again, mobile work, because in a centre, you have the same aviary, the same practice every day you do with the bird. Mobile events, you've got maybe the same type of setup with the netting around it, etc. But you'll have, you know, different venue with different issues. Another example, you know, you're flying your bird in the centre, you know it's safe, you know the area, the bird knows the area. We go to another venue and we've been told, right, that's the arena for the flying show. I'll go in the arena, I'll look around, I'll think, right, is there a road nearby? No. There's not a hidden railway, I can't see, no. Any power lines in the area? Anything in the field it could get distracted and check? No. And we do that risk assessment every time. So you've just got to be a bit more vigilant and kind of on it with the control. And one other thing, and this is about volunteers and team members, and this pertains to centres as well, probably quite evenly, is that it's very important to very efficiently train your team members and do little reminder training sessions and so on, but that doesn't stop them making a mistake. So all you can do there is do as much training as possible, reminding them, sending them on courses, doing surprise pop-up quizzes, whatever it might be, to keep their knowledge good and to keep their practices as they should be. One of the biggest risks is the simple safety grip, tying the bird on, and then losing the bird suddenly because it's suddenly baited. They thought they had the grip, turns out they didn't. So that's the sort of thing I have to look out for the most with the team members. So, you know, as I'm talking, you can see it's quite complicated. There's a lot to it. You know, there's a lot of different elements. There are three things sort of legally you have to do the mobile work. One is your public liability insurance, good to get up to £10 million. If you have staff or volunteers, and you need the employees' liability as well. You need a risk assessment. A generic one might work for all events, but you might need to do a new one for different events sometimes. And the third thing is your AAL, or Animal Activities License, which is a fairly new license which came in to replace the old style, what was it called, performing animals license. And that's an inspection we have every 3 years. Well, we had our first one a couple of years ago, and we got the full 3 years, so that's really good. There's a lot of paperwork involved. It's a bit like a scaled down version of the zoo license, but a lot of record keeping. You've got to have policies for everything that could possibly happen. And that isn't easy. So if you think, oh, I'm not very good with admin, and I'm not, to be honest with you, I need help with it because it's not my cup of tea. I like flying the birds and getting out there and doing practical stuff. Then, go on a course, have a system. I use Google Sheets to help me. I have team members help me with the paperwork, make sure I'm filling it in right because, it's looking at the errors I can make there. I'll go pick up Henrietta again while you prepare the next question. She's just over here on a perch. I think everyone's had enough of my face, so I'll bring you back into the picture again. There we go. Yeah, like I say, this is the, I'm in my aviary sort of safety corridor / workshop. 6 foot wide, and it goes about 20 odd feet. Got a couple of perches on the side there to sort of get on them, if we're sort of weighing birds or that, changing the equipment, just popping on the perch or whatever. So that's where she headed off to a minute ago.
What I'd like to ask, Ryan, is I'd like to get down to the nitty-gritty, if you like, of this industry that you're in. So how many birds of prey can one person reasonably work with in a day? And also, Ryan, what sort of seed capital do you need? What money do you need to get started in the first year of such a business?
Well, on the first question there, it's very easy to have too many birds. And, how much time someone has will depend on that person. If it's their only job, they'll probably have quite a bit of time in the day. If they have children to take to school and sort out and things like that, that can make it difficult as well. I can only have 12 birds of prey, and I could not look after them all without the help I've got. Really, I think my maximum would be 4 or 5 if it was just me, to look after them properly. And so, we have 12 birds, which allows us to take 4 or 5 to an event and give the birds a day off. And if we're doing a really big event like the York Balloon Fiesta or Wakefield Armed Forces Day or something like that, lots of people, we'll take all of the birds along. We sometimes even have other falconry friends bring along a couple of their birds as well. And we do bird holds, we do bird handling. Now we charge £4 a hold, or 2 for 6, and I only ever do the holds with a fee. So for example, if someone rings me up and says, we've got an event on and we want it to be free for everybody who goes, nothing to pay for when you're there, how much would it be to let everyone just hold your birds as much as they like? Now they could offer me £2,000-3,000. We're not going to do it because that's too much work for us. And it's too much work for the birds as well. It doesn't, because if it's free holds, everyone will want to do it, and probably more than once. And there's none of just little Timmy coming up and holding the same owl over and over and over again. And it's the same if you do it on a donation basis as well. So we always have that price tag to control the amount of holds that we actually do. And at the really busy events, as I mentioned, I'll have a team of us there, and I'll actually manage the birds. I'll manage the queue. So let's say a queue builds up. I'll be there with the iPad. I'm chatting away. I'm giving them facts about the birds and entertaining and say, oh, did you know this bird over here can catch a so-and-so and all this kind of stuff. And at the same time, I'm watching which birds are being held and I'm asking certain volunteers to get certain birds. And that stops any one bird being overheld. It stops it getting out of control, if you like. And that way it's really controlled. And the team members have said, actually, we much prefer it that way as well, because I'm not then looking up and going, who's next and things like that. And we can do it in a nice professional way that way, you see. So yes, any number of birds really, but what people maybe don't realise is how much time it takes for each bird on a daily basis. If it's free-lofted in an aviary, then you don't necessarily have to fly it every day. She's just showing off her wings a little bit, isn't she? But you do need to fly it on a regular basis. Trade with it, things like that. You're checking your birds on a regular basis. You're checking the equipment. You're spending time with them, just holding them, taking them for a walk, and just giving them as much time as you can, especially with the owls, and keeping them as tame as possible. When it comes to capita, when it comes to money, the way I did it is that I started, as I said, by borrowing a few owls for a few months before I'd made a bit of money and was able to look out and buy my own birds. And because it costs more than you realise. I worked that out. I think there was the first June we had, it was quite a busy month. And I kind of said to my wife, oh, I've made X amount of thousands of pounds this month. It's brilliant. This business will really work. She said, oh, wow. How much money have you got as a wage this month? And I did the count with 42p because I spent it all on the business. And that's when I realized, oh, I need to get my business head on here and actually manage the cash flow. Because that year we bought birds, we bought materials for housing, we bought perches, gloves, signage, all kinds of things. You know, when you add it up, like I say, with the insurance and all the different things you have to pay for, it does add up. Even a very small falconry mobile zoo type business with maybe only 5 or 6 birds, you're still going to need 20 to 25,000 pounds a year in costs quite easily. It really does add up, you know. So yeah, and it will vary between different businesses, but like I say, I've done it long enough now to know what's required and when, and not let the tax bill catch you out and all that kind of thing. You know, you've got to. There's almost 2 sides to the business in a way. There's the business side and there's the animal welfare side, and in a way, the two kind of fight against each other. Because if you're being very business-like, business-headed, you're saying, right, I want these birds out to as many events as possible. I want to be held as much as possible. I need them to be maximum turnover with these birds. Whereas the animal welfare person in you saying, well, no, they've been out 3 times this week. That's enough, you know, or I'd rather, you know, it just stayed at home and had some water today. It's a bit warm or whatever. Now, it's not a problem. You know, there isn't any real dilemma between the two, but it is a way that's a look at it. So I make sure to put the birds first, of course, whenever, like I say, have them overworked. But at the same time, you've got to think about the cash flow as well and the money it's making, as any business would have to do. And, you know, the coronavirus lockdown has sort of proved to me exactly how those costs work, because the majority of the costs had to still be paid. The food for the birds, the F10 antibac, all those different things that you pay for regularly, all remain just to look after them, essentially, you know. So what you need, and this pertains to the costs, is more than anything a really good place to keep your birds. Your aviaries don't have to be enormous, but they need to be the right sort of size, the right type of materials, and it needs to be quite secure and accessible for you and things like that. Because the birds will live in those enclosures, I'm surrounded by them here, most of the time. No matter how much you take them out on displays or fly them, that is their main home. So that has to be all high quality, really professional, with good systems in place, you know, cleaning regimes, feeding regimes, so you vary the diet, and all those sort of different things, with all those policies as well. So yeah, when you put it all together, it isn't easy, but if you can start small and start to make a bit of money, you could then reinvest into the business and build it up from there.
This next question, Ryan, there's somebody watching this who thinks, like I have for more than 25 years, I want to work with animals. This question is a bit psychological. Do you see yourself as a businessman, and what does being a businessman mean to you?
I don't see myself as being a businessman. I've been entrepreneurial within the business, as it were, and I've now got little business ideas. But I know if I took any of those on, then I would be taking my time away from working with the birds, of course. And I actually learned that lesson a few years ago. I took on a flying show contract at a venue. It was going to be the dream job to do, because it was going to be, you know, just flying shows, and I would then staff nearly everything else I do. I have found myself in the end unable to efficiently train and retrain staff. I bit off more than I can chew, and it was a good lesson. And I ended up stopping those shows and getting back to the main work I do. I kind of find if I'm not regularly there on displays, because I do send staff out with the birds sometimes, but if I'm not there on a regular basis doing the majority of the work, things start to go a bit wrong. And there are gaps in the training of the staff and things like that. And so that's certainly you know, an important element to it. So yes, I'm a businessman in the sense that I'm self-employed, but I probably don't, in a way, manage the money as best I should, because I'm thinking more about the birds. So I don't worry too much about the budget. I just think, no, we want to spend the money on that new AstroTurf. I want to spend the money on that new mesh for the aviary, or whatever it might be, and improve things. You know, a lot of the last few sort of months of this sort of winter lockdown, I've actually spent time amending aviaries, making that a bit bigger and changing that here, there, and doing things which costs money. I'm not doing it for my sake. I'm doing it for the birds, for the practices. But anything that makes our job easier then results in the birds' lives being better. They have better enrichment, better care overall. You know, it kind of builds up and adds up, you see. So no, I see myself foremost as a falconer, a display falconer. And to me, there's two elements to that. There's just the general husbandry of the birds, and then there's the education side as well. My favorite thing to do is flying shows. Love flying the birds. It's great for the bird. It's great for the person flying the bird. It's great for people watching the birds fly. And essentially people, the general public, they want to, more than anything, hold birds and see them fly. So that's what we deliver as much as we can. And I've become quite innovative with some of the things I do in the flying shows. For example, we've got the hawk helmet, and I've actually trained my Harris hawks to chase this helmet with a lure on the top, so we can put it on someone's head and say, can you run from one side of the arena to the other before the hawk lands on your head, and exciting things like that. And so, love you, come girl. So that's one of the elements to that we do. And because I've done all this performance before in theatre and things like that, I've put those theatrics into the shows. You know, I don't just stand there and do fact. It's kind of a couple of interesting facts. Something cool happens, but if the music's underneath, you know, I make a joke, a couple of facts. I sort of split it up dynamics and get the volunteers in and do different things and that kind of thing. So I see myself as a foremost, not a businessman, and more a showman, a display falconer, someone who's going to get out there and educate, do the school visits and that kind of thing, because that's me at heart, not a businessman at heart. I'm an educator, a performance guy, kind of show off, if you like. That's kind of what I am really at heart. So, yeah.
The people on YouTube, people like, entrepreneurial gurus, success motivators, people like that, they talk about a business needing not one unique selling point, but 3 unique selling points. I know yours is an animal business. Indeed, 99% of businesses we interview on the channel are animal-related businesses. That's the nature of the channel. Would you say you have 3 USPs? If so, what are they? Because I know there's others.
I think of 2 straight away. 1, really exciting, unique flying shows, which add a bit of theatrics. Nothing that isn't natural for the bird, of course. It's the birds, as far as they're concerned, they're doing the same thing, but you dress it up with the music and the comedy and the activity. So, yeah, flying shows that people will remember and find fascinating. And the second one would be that when people do hold a bird, it's not just you hold the bird, get some pictures, we'll just stand out the way. We're telling the bird's name, its age, facts about the birds, and getting those responses, those reactions from people. And many people have gone away saying, wow, that was the best £4 I ever spent. I've held that bird for 5 minutes and I've learned so much, and it was just an amazing experience. That's something we love to do well. And I suppose the third one, if I had to encompass everything we do, is happy. It's about not just the customers. I mean, a lot of my team members, my volunteers, I've had many of them over the years. Some come and do just weeks, some come and do years. And I think about 85% of them would admit to suffering from some kind of mental health issue in the past, by anxiety, depression, whatever it might be. And those sort of people are drawn to working with animals. And I've got people who help me out now who remind me regularly, thank you for this opportunity. It keeps me sane. It helps me so much. And they become really involved with the birds, and they love getting to know the birds and flying them. And my volunteers, my team members, I will train them to do whatever they want to do. If they want to progress right to the point where they're flying falcons for the lure and doing the more difficult things like that, then I'm happy to do that. We have a training program they follow, but I'm very much universal like that. So like I say, it's the third one is making people happy, the customers and the team members as well.
Are you taking on volunteers now, Ryan?
We are. We've got quite a few waiting, actually, because we're going to start back to work soon with displays. And I've got quite a few people waiting to join. A lot of them are doing their animal management courses at various colleges or universities, and they need the hours for their volunteering. And others do it just in the spare time, or it's almost, 1 or 2 of them, it's almost their sort of full-time hobby now that they've retired or whatever, So, yeah, we've got new people coming on all the time, and it's great to have a fantastic team of people. Yeah.
I always have the greatest respect for somebody who does what you did, took the plunge, started an animal related business, and I always imagine that whenever somebody actually does that, the very next day an international catastrophe is announced. How did you manage, how do you deal with two things, bird flu and COVID?
COVID or lockdowns came and almost everything we do then got stopped. Luckily, because I've been paying taxes, I can get the support money. So we've managed that way, and we've got through it. And I'm actually amazed we've got through it because it's been very long. We had an okay-ish August last year in the middle of it all, which helped. But we rely, especially in York, a lot of international tourism, so it has been tough. But we've got through it. We've not had to ask for donations or help in that respect. It's given me an opportunity to do things which I didn't quite find the time for. For example, last year I did my Rapture Award, so I sat and studied and got that and passed that, got that certificate. I spent some more time on the aviaries and making them bigger and better and changing things and, little improvements like that, really. So that's been okay. The bird flu comes around every winter, so we've always got to be careful. I think flying the owls and hawks in the woods here where we are is relatively safe. So we can kind of do a little bit of that in the winter. But my falcons, unfortunately, haven't been able to fly free until recently because we just don't want to risk them going off in a distance and going near. There is a waterfowl sort of lake about a mile away and it's possible. So yes, we've just had to pause things like that. But if we were doing our normal display work, bird flu doesn't become a big problem really because it's a winter thing, and in winter we do less flying shows and outdoor events anyway. It's more school visits and sort of other little indoor things like that, so it's not normally a big problem. And luckily, we've got through to the other side, it seems. Fingers crossed we're on the way out of it. Sitting looks that way.
Ryan, have you got anything else that you would like to add?
Oh gosh, I mean, I could talk for hours. That's the problem. There's so much that you can talk about, from the birds of prey in the wild and just talking about owls and birds of prey in the wild, how they hunt and survive and new things you're learning, to talking about falconry practices and how you train a bird, or how all the husbandry elements and all the things. I mean, it's amazing. When I first started, I did not realize the amount of things that were involved with it all. And now I've got, if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I'd like to earn a bird one day, what do I do?" I say, "Right, how much time have you got?" Because there's a lot involved. Nothing you can't learn, but you've got to learn it and do it right. So, yeah, it's like I say, it's one big. That's one of the things I love about it. The fact you never stop learning. And like I said, I'm so passionate about working with the birds and educating people. And part of that is the fact that I'm always learning as well. And one of the reasons I've done my own YouTube channel is because it helps my mind learn new things and remember things as well, because I'm doing a bit of fact checking and things like that. So it's great. And yeah, like I say, just so privileged to be doing this. That's it really. So yes, nothing in particular I want to add, because as I say, we can go on for hours and hours, and I have been proved to do that in the past. So we'll try not to let that happen today.
Ryan Stocks, head falconer at Owl Adventures, thank you very much for being on the Practical Animal channel.
No problem, John. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.